When a girl let a stranger use her bicycle, she never imagined he would return with an unexpected gift that would change everything. In a neighborhood where trust was scarce, Lily's split-second decision to help someone she'd never met before seemed foolish to everyone around her. But sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can trigger the most extraordinary chain of events. What began as a simple loan would soon transform not just two lives, but an entire community in ways no one could have predicted. Lily Morgan treasured her blue bicycle more than anything else she owned. In her struggling neighborhood on the edge of town, where most families barely made ends meet, that bicycle represented freedom. A rare luxury in a place where dreams often died young. She'd saved for 2 years, collecting recyclables and doing odd jobs around the neighborhood to afford it. Every scratch on its frame told a story of her determination. Every mile on its tires a testament to her independence in a world that offered little of it. The bicycle wasn't just transportation. It was her escape from the cramped 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her parents and 2 younger siblings. When life became too loud or too heavy, she would ride to the small park 3 miles away, where the view of downtown's skyline reminded her that there was a bigger world waiting beyond her neighborhood's boundaries. But on that rainy Tuesday afternoon in late October, everything changed. The sky had opened up without warning during her last class, and now Lily was soaked to the bone, rushing home from school with her backpack covered by her jacket in a futile attempt to keep her textbooks dry. The cold rain stung her face as she pedaled, her sneakers already squishing with each push of the pedals. That's when she spotted him. A tall, disheveled man in a tattered suit that had once been nice, but now hung awkwardly on his thin frame. He stood frantically checking his watch at the bus stop, shoulders hunched against the downpour, no umbrella in sight. His worn leather briefcase was tucked under his arm, and even from a distance, Lily could see the desperate look in his eyes as he scanned the empty street for any sign of the bus. Something made her slow down. Perhaps it was curiosity, or maybe the unmistakable look of someone whose last hope was quickly washing away with the rain. "Excuse me," he called out when he noticed her, his voice cracking with urgency. "Do you know if the number 16 bus has already passed? The schedule said 3:15, but it's 3:25 now." Lily shook her head. "The 16 only runs in the morning now. Budget cuts. They announced it last month." The man's face crumpled. No, this can't be happening." He ran a hand through his wet hair, leaving it standing in desperate spikes. "I have a job interview across town at Marshall Engineering in 30 minutes. It's my first interview in 8 months, and if I miss it..." His voice trailed off, the implications hanging heavy in the rain-soaked air. Lily clutched her handlebars tighter, water dripping from her elbows as she considered the stranger. This man wasn't from their neighborhood. She would have recognized him. Her parents had drilled into her head since childhood. Don't talk to strangers. Don't trust people you don't know. Keep to yourself and stay safe. It was the unwritten rule of their community, born from necessity and hard lessons. "Isn't there a taxi you could call?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Taxis rarely ventured into their part of town, and when they did, they charged extra. "I tried. Nothing available for at least 40 minutes. He checked his watch again, his hands visibly shaking. "I've been out of work since the factory closed. This interview, it's for a maintenance position. Nothing fancy, but it's steady work with benefits. My daughter needs medication that..." He stopped himself, seeming embarrassed by his oversharing. Lily noticed the worn wedding band on his finger, the carefully mended tear on his jacket sleeve, the way he stood with dignity despite his circumstances. Her bicycle was everything to her. The thought of handing it over to a stranger made her stomach twist into knots. "Please," he whispered, meeting her eyes directly. "I promise I'll bring it back. This interview could change everything for me and my family. I'm Marcus, by the way. Marcus Delaney." He held out his hand, then awkwardly pulled it back, realizing the formality seemed out of place in their current situation. With trembling hands and a racing heart, Lily made a decision that defied everything she'd been taught. She stepped off her bicycle and adjusted the seat higher. "Marshall Engineering is on Westfield Avenue, right? Past the community college?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Yes," he nodded, hope cautiously creeping into his expression. "Take 7th Street instead of the main road. It's faster and has less traffic." She handed over the handlebars, her fingers reluctant to release them. "I'm Lily. Lily Morgan. I live in the blue apartment building on Cedar Street, apartment 4B. Marcus looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and profound gratitude. "Lily Morgan of Cedar Street, apartment 4B, he repeated solemnly. "I swear to you, I'll bring this back. Thank you. Thank you so much." As he adjusted his briefcase and prepared to leave, Lily added, "Good luck with your interview. I hope you get the job." He nodded, his eyes suddenly bright with what might have been tears mingling with the rain. "This means more than you know." But as she watched the stranger pedal away with her most valuable possession, his form growing smaller in the distance until the rain swallowed him completely, Lily had no idea how this split-second decision would change not just his life, but hers forever. She stood there long after he disappeared, rain soaking through to her skin, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her young life, or perhaps, though she couldn't possibly know it yet, the most important choice she would ever make. By the time Lily reached her apartment, the rain had subsided to a gentle drizzle, but the storm inside her mind raged on. Her soaked clothes clung uncomfortably to her skin as she climbed the 4 flights of stairs to 4B, each step heavier than the last. The stairwell smelled of old cooking oil and the faint mustiness that never quite left the building, no matter how many times the superintendent claimed to have fixed the ventilation system. Water dripped from her hair, forming small puddles on the worn carpet of the hallway as she fumbled for her keys. She paused at the door, trying to compose herself, knowing what waited on the other side. The Morgan family apartment was small, but meticulously kept, her mother's defense against the shabbiness of the building itself. The walls were thin enough that Lily could already hear the television playing one of her brother's cartoon shows, the volume set just low enough to avoid complaints from their perpetually irritable neighbor, Mr. Guzman. Taking a deep breath, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. Immediately hit by the warmth and the smell of her mother's beef stew simmering on the stove. A rare treat that meant her mother had picked up an extra shift that week. "Where's your bike?" her mother asked immediately, looking up from the pile of bills spread across their small kitchen table. Elena Morgan's eyes narrowed with suspicion, the worry lines around them deepening. At 39, she looked a decade older, worn down by years of double shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nursing assistant. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. A face that had once been as hopeful and open as Lily's, according to the fading photographs tucked away in the family album. Lily hesitated, knowing the truth would unleash a torrent of disapproval. She considered lying, saying she'd left it at a friend's house or that it had a flat tire. But dishonesty had never come easily to her. Another trait her mother often said would make life harder than it needed to be in their part of town. "I let someone borrow it," she finally admitted, setting her wet backpack carefully by the door to avoid creating more mess for her mother to clean up. "You what?" Her mother's voice rose sharply, the pen she'd been using to balance their precarious budget dropping from her fingers. "Who? One of your friends?" "Not exactly," Lily admitted, her voice growing smaller as she shrugged off her damp jacket and hung it on the overcrowded coat rack by the door. "A man at the bus stop needed to get to a job interview and—" "You gave your bicycle to a stranger?" Her mother stood up so quickly that her chair scraped loudly against the linoleum floor, startling Rosa, who had been quietly coloring at the other end of the table. "Lily Maria Morgan. Have you lost your mind? That bike cost you 2 years of saving. You'll never see it again." Her father emerged from the bedroom, where he'd been resting before his night shift at the warehouse. David Morgan's perpetually tired eyes widened as he caught the tail end of the conversation. At 42, his once athletic frame had begun to stoop slightly from years of lifting heavy boxes, his hands calloused and permanently stained with the industrial cleaner used at the warehouse. The economic downturn had cost him his job as a construction foreman 3 years ago, and the warehouse position paid barely half of what he'd once earned. "What's this about your bike?" he asked, his normally gentle voice edged with concern. He ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair, the premature gray a testament to years of stress that he tried to hide behind an easy smile. As Lily repeated her story, adding details about Marcus's job interview and his daughter, her parents exchanged the look she knew all too well, the one that said their daughter was too trusting, too naive for the harsh realities of their world. It was the same look they'd given each other when she'd invited the new girl everyone avoided to her birthday party, or when she'd returned a wallet with $60 inside that she'd found at the bus stop last year. "I know his name," Lily offered weakly, sinking onto the couch where Miguel was too absorbed in his cartoon to pay attention to the unfolding drama. "Marcus Delaney. He promised he'd bring it back." Her father sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Lily, honey, people make promises they don't intend to keep all the time, especially when they want something." "He seemed honest," she insisted, though doubt had already begun to gnaw at her confidence. The certainty she'd felt in that rain-soaked moment was fading under the harsh fluorescent kitchen light and her parents' skepticism. "I'm sure he did," her mother replied bitterly, returning to her chair and gathering the scattered bills into a neat pile. "Con artists usually do. Remember Mrs. Abernathy in 2A? Gave her life savings to that investment specialist who promised to double her money. Haven't seen him since, have we?" The conversation spiraled predictably from there. Lectures about safety, reminders of how hard she'd worked for that bicycle, warnings about the dangers of trusting strangers. Her mother recounted neighborhood horror stories of thefts and scams, while her father, the gentler of the two, tried to soften the blow by acknowledging her good intentions while emphasizing the foolishness of her actions. By dinner, the disappointment in the apartment was palpable, hanging over their small table like a cloud. The stew, usually a cause for celebration, was eaten in uncomfortable silence, broken only by the clink of spoons against bowls, and Rosa's occasional innocent questions, quickly hushed by their mother. Even her younger siblings sensed it. 10-year-old Miguel kept his eyes on his plate, occasionally shooting sympathetic glances at his older sister. He'd witnessed her painstaking saving for that bike, had helped her collect cans on weekends, and had been her first passenger, perched on the handlebars for a triumphant ride around the block when she'd finally brought it home. 7-year-old Rosa occasionally glanced at Lily with a mixture of confusion and awe at her older sister's recklessness. Too young to fully understand the magnitude of what had happened, but old enough to absorb the tension. Maybe he really will bring it back. Rosa offered hopefully during a particularly heavy silence, earning a gentle, "Eat your dinner, sweetheart," from their father and a skeptical snort from their mother. That night, Lily lay awake in the bedroom she shared with Rosa, listening to her sister's soft breathing and the distant sounds of the city filtering through their window. Occasional car horns, the rumble of the elevated train 3 blocks away, someone's music playing faintly from another apartment. The familiar urban lullaby usually comforted her. But tonight it only emphasized how connected yet isolated they all were in this crowded neighborhood where caution had become second nature. She replayed the afternoon's events in her mind, examining them from every angle. Had she been foolish? Was Marcus Delaney laughing somewhere, pleased with how easily he'd acquired a free bicycle? Or was he, as she wanted to believe, simply a desperate man who needed a break? She remembered the sincerity in his eyes, the tremor in his voice when he spoke of his daughter. People in their neighborhood had learned to be suspicious, to expect the worst from others. But what kind of world were they creating by never extending trust? Her thoughts drifted to her grandmother, her mother's mother, who had passed away 2 years ago. Abuela Rosalinda had been different. Generous to a fault, always ready with a kind word or a meal for anyone in need. "The world takes enough from people like us," she used to say in her lilting accent. "Don't let it take your humanity, too." Her mother had often argued with Abuela about this philosophy, calling it impractical and dangerous. Now Lily wondered if she'd inherited more of her grandmother's nature than her mother's pragmatism. Still, as she finally drifted off to sleep, Lily couldn't shake the sinking feeling that perhaps her parents were right. Perhaps she had seen only what she wanted to see in a stranger's face, and her prized possession was gone forever, sacrificed on the altar of naive optimism. The next day at school, the story spread quickly among her friends. Lily hadn't planned to tell anyone, but Zoe had immediately noticed her walking instead of riding to school, and had pried the truth out of her before first period. "You did what?" exclaimed Zoe, her best friend since kindergarten, as they sat at their usual lunch table in the crowded, noisy cafeteria. She paused mid-bite of her sandwich, brown eyes wide with disbelief. "Girl, that bike is history. You're never seeing it again." "My cousin got mugged last year in that same spot," added Jamal, shaking his head as he slid onto the bench across from them, setting down his tray of questionable cafeteria pizza. "You're lucky all you lost was your bike." "I think it was brave," said Dina quietly from the end of the table. As the newest member of their friend group, having moved from Minneapolis just last semester, she often offered a different perspective. "But maybe next time just give him bus fare instead?" They all laughed at that, breaking some of the tension, but Lily noticed the pitying looks they exchanged when they thought she wasn't watching. By afternoon, word had spread beyond her immediate circle. Tyler from her math class offered her a ride home on his handlebars. Ms. Perez, the guidance counselor, stopped her in the hallway to ask if everything was okay at home, clearly concerned that giving away a prized possession might indicate some deeper issue. Even Mr. Harrington, her favorite English teacher, had heard about it. He kept her after class, his kind face etched with concern as the other students filed out, leaving them alone in the classroom that smelled of chalk dust and the faint, lingering scent of the tuna sandwich he'd eaten at his desk during lunch. "That was a generous thing you did, Lily," he said carefully, perching on the edge of his desk. His bow tie was slightly crooked, as always, and the elbow patches on his tweed jacket had seen better days. But also risky. Very risky. "I know," she admitted, adjusting the strap of her backpack. Everyone keeps telling me how stupid I was. Mr. Harrington leaned against his desk, his expression thoughtful. I didn't say stupid. I said risky. There's a difference. The world needs more kindness, not less. Just be careful about how you show it. He reached for a book on his desk, a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird that they'd been studying. Remember what Atticus says about walking in another person's shoes? You saw someone in need and you responded with empathy. That's rare and valuable. But so are you, Lily Morgan. And that bicycle represented countless hours of your hard work. His words were small comfort as Lily walked home that afternoon. The absence of her bicycle a painful reminder of what now felt like naive impulsiveness. The route seemed longer on foot, giving her too much time to replay everyone's warnings and predictions. She passed the spot where she'd encountered Marcus Delaney, now occupied by a group of middle schoolers sharing a bag of chips. No sign that anything significant had happened there just yesterday. That evening, she started a homework assignment for Mr. Harrington's class, an essay about a moral dilemma, and realized with a mixture of irony and sadness that she now had the perfect topic. Would she make the same choice again, knowing what she knew now? She wasn't sure, and that uncertainty kept her awake long after Rosa had fallen asleep. 3 days passed with no sign of Marcus Delaney or her blue bicycle. Her parents had stopped mentioning it, which was somehow worse than their lectures. Their silence spoke volumes. We told you so. This is what happens when you trust too easily. Each time she walked through the door, her mother's eyes would flicker expectantly, then dim with confirmation of her predictions. Lily had begun calculating how long it would take to save for another bike. 2 years had been possible when she was 14. At 16, with college applications looming, it seemed impossible to dedicate that much time and money to replacing what she'd lost. The weight of her decision grew heavier with each passing day. On the 4th day, Saturday morning, Lily was helping her mother fold laundry in the living room, the television murmuring in the background. Miguel and Rosa were at the park with their father, enjoying a rare morning when he wasn't sleeping after his night shift. The apartment was unusually quiet, the silence between mother and daughter filled only by the rhythmic motion of folding warm clothes from the laundromat down the street. "I'm sorry about the bike, Mom," Lily said suddenly, smoothing a pillowcase with more attention than it required. Her mother's hands paused briefly over a towel, then resumed their practiced movements. "I know you are, Mija. I really thought he would bring it back." Elena sighed, setting aside a neatly folded shirt. "You have your grandmother's heart. She never learned either." Before Lily could ask what her mother meant by that cryptic statement, the apartment buzzer sounded, its harsh electronic tone startling them both. As the designated door answerer of the family, she trudged to the intercom mounted on the wall near the entrance, expecting one of the neighbors or perhaps the superintendent about the perpetually broken heating system. "Who is it?" she asked, pressing the worn button, her finger leaving a slight indentation in the soft plastic. "It's Marcus Delaney," came the reply, sending her heart into a sudden gallop. The voice was unmistakable, though clearer and more confident than it had been in the rain. "I have Lily Morgan's bicycle." Lily's finger froze on the intercom button, her mother's startled gaze meeting hers across the room. For a moment, neither of them moved, as if afraid that any sudden action might shatter this unexpected turn of events. The folded laundry sat forgotten on the coffee table, a sock dangling precariously from the edge. "Did he say?" her mother began, disbelief evident in her voice. She set down the towel she'd been folding, her hands slightly trembling. Lily nodded, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain her mother could hear it. The intercom crackled with static, waiting for a response. She pressed the button again. I'll come down, she managed to say, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. Her mother was already reaching for her shoes, slipping them on with uncharacteristic haste. "I'm coming with you," she said firmly, any hint of their previous tension momentarily forgotten in the face of this development. She grabbed her house keys from the hook by the door, the familiar worry lines between her eyebrows deepening. They descended the 4 flights of stairs in silence, Lily taking the steps 2 at a time, her mother keeping pace behind her. The stairwell seemed different somehow, the same peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights, but charged with a new energy. Mrs. Vasquez from 3C poked her head out as they passed, curious about their rapid descent. But neither Morgan paused to explain. When they reached the building's entrance, Lily hesitated, her hand on the door handle, suddenly nervous about what, or who, awaited them on the other side. What if it was some cruel joke? What if someone had overheard her story and decided to torment her further? Or worse, what if Marcus Delaney had returned only to demand some additional payment or favor? "Mom," she whispered, uncertainty washing over her. Her mother's expression softened momentarily. She squeezed Lily's shoulder. "Let's just see," she said simply. Taking a deep breath, Lily pushed open the door and stepped into the crisp autumn morning. Sunlight flooded the entrance, a stark contrast to the rain-soaked day when she'd last seen her bicycle. The air smelled of fallen leaves and the faint aroma of fresh bread from the bakery 2 blocks away. There, standing on the cracked sidewalk in front of their apartment building, was Marcus Delaney. He looked markedly different from the desperate man Lily had encountered in the rain. His hair was neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. And though he wore the same suit, it appeared to have been recently pressed. The worn leather briefcase was still tucked under his arm, but he held it with a new confidence, his posture straighter, his shoulders no longer hunched against invisible weight. Beside him stood a girl of about 12, with her father's serious eyes and a tentative smile. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat braid, and she wore a yellow sweater that brightened her otherwise pale complexion. She fidgeted slightly under the Morgan's gaze, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. And between them, gleaming in the morning sunlight, was Lily's blue bicycle. Not only returned, but noticeably cleaner than when she'd last seen it. The chrome handlebars sparkled, the frame had been wiped down, and even the worn seat seemed to have been carefully conditioned. "Lily Morgan," Marcus said, his face breaking into a wide smile that transformed his features entirely. "I told you I'd bring it back." For a moment, Lily couldn't speak. After days of doubt and regret, the sight of her bicycle, actually returned as promised, seemed almost surreal. She felt her mother's presence behind her, equally stunned into silence. "You actually came back," she finally said, moving forward to touch the familiar handlebars as if to confirm they were real. Her fingers traced the small dent on the left side, a battle scar from her first week of ownership when she'd misjudged the distance to a fire hydrant. "Of course I did," Marcus replied, his tone suggesting there had never been any question. "I keep my promises." He glanced at Lily's mother, who stood watching the exchange with undisguised amazement. "You must be Mrs. Morgan. I'm Marcus Delaney, and this is my daughter, Amelia." The girl stepped forward, extending her hand with a formal politeness that seemed beyond her years. "Thank you for letting my dad borrow your bike," she said to Lily. "It really helped us a lot." Her voice was soft but clear, with a slight tremor that hinted at shyness. Elena Morgan shook the girl's hand automatically, her expression softening slightly at the child's earnestness. "You're welcome," she said, though they both knew the decision had been entirely Lily's. Elena's eyes darted between the bicycle, Marcus, and his daughter, as if trying to reconcile this reality with the scenario she'd been certain would unfold. Marcus cleared his throat. "I wanted to return this properly, and to thank you in person." He gestured toward the bicycle. "I had it tuned up at the shop on Westfield Avenue. The brakes were a little loose, and the chain needed oiling. They also fixed that wobble in the front wheel." Lily ran her hand along the seat, noticing the fresh adjustments. The pedals turned more smoothly than before, and the kickstand no longer stuck halfway up. "You didn't have to do that." "I did, actually," Marcus insisted, a hint of emotion creeping into his voice. "Your bike got me to that interview on time, and I got the job." His voice cracked slightly on the last word, emotion briefly overtaking his composed demeanor. "You did?" Lily's face lit up, her previous doubts forgotten in the excitement of this news. "That's amazing." Amelia beamed up at her father, pride evident in her expression. "He starts on Monday. We're celebrating today." She bounced slightly on her toes as she spoke, unable to contain her excitement. "Maintenance supervisor," Marcus added, a hint of pride creeping into his voice. "Better pay than I expected. Full benefits after 90 days. He glanced at Amelia, his expression softening. "It means her medication will be covered again." Amelia ducked her head slightly at this mention, and Lily noticed the medical alert bracelet partially hidden by the sleeve of her yellow sweater. She remembered Marcus's brief mention of his daughter's medication needs during their rain-soaked encounter, a detail that had gotten lost in the retelling to her skeptical family and friends. Elena's posture relaxed slightly, her skepticism giving way to a cautious acceptance. The defensive set of her shoulders eased, and her expression shifted from guarded to contemplative. "Congratulations on the job, Mr. Delaney." "Please call me Marcus." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope, slightly worn at the edges, as if he'd been carrying it for days, waiting for this moment. "I also wanted to give you this, Lily. It's not much, but..." Lily accepted the envelope, feeling her mother's curious gaze as she carefully opened it to find a gift card to Riverdale Books, the small independent bookstore near her school that she'd mentioned loving during their brief encounter. The card wasn't for a large amount, $25 according to the handwritten note on the back, but in their neighborhood, it represented a significant gesture. "How did you know I liked that bookstore?" she asked, surprised. She was certain she hadn't mentioned it during their brief interaction. Marcus smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "You had their bookmark sticking out of your backpack when we met. I noticed it while you were adjusting the bicycle seat for me. It's my daughter's favorite place, too." Amelia nodded enthusiastically. "They let you sit and read, even if you don't buy anything. And the lady who works there on Saturdays gives out hot chocolate in the winter." The thoughtfulness of the gesture, that he had noticed such a small detail during their brief, rain-soaked encounter, left Lily momentarily speechless. She glanced at her mother, whose expression had softened further, the doubt in her eyes giving way to something like grudging respect. "Thank you," Lily finally said, clutching the gift card. "But you didn't need to." "I wanted to," Marcus interrupted gently. "What you did, most people wouldn't have done it. You took a chance on a stranger when you had every reason not to. That kind of trust is rare." He looked down at his daughter, who was now examining a ladybug that had landed on the bicycle's handlebars. especially in times like these. Elena placed a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. It was also risky, she pointed out, though her tone lacked its earlier edge. It was less an accusation now and more an observation, the words of someone who had seen too many kindnesses go unrewarded in a hard world. It was. Marcus agreed readily, meeting Elena's gaze with understanding. And believe me, I've spent the last few days thinking about what it meant that someone would extend that kind of trust to me. He looked directly at Lily. It reminded me of who I used to be, before things got tough. The kind of person I want to be again. The kind of person I want Amelia to become. A moment of silence settled between them, filled with the ambient sounds of Saturday morning in the neighborhood. Distant car horns, music playing from an open window across the street, the laughter of children at the playground a block away. In that moment, they were just four people standing on a sidewalk, connected by an act of faith that had defied expectation. Amelia tugged at her father's sleeve, breaking the silence. "Can we invite them to get ice cream with us, Dad? Please?" Her eyes darted hopefully between her father and the Morgans. "We're going to Gianelli's to celebrate. They have 16 flavors." The unexpected invitation hung in the air. Lily looked hopefully at her mother, surprised to see the conflict playing across her face. The instinctive caution warring with something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. For a moment, Elena Morgan seemed to be seeing someone else in Marcus's place. Perhaps remembering a time when circumstances hadn't yet hardened her against the possibility of unexpected kindness. "We were just about to have lunch," Elena began, her automatic refusal faltering as she looked between Marcus, Amelia, and her own daughter's expectant face. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture Lily recognized as a sign of her mother considering something unexpected. "We could eat lunch together," Lily suggested quickly, sensing the rare opportunity in her mother's hesitation. "There's that new sandwich place that opened on Maple Street. Miguel said their turkey club is amazing." She didn't mention that her brother had only heard this secondhand, as the family's budget rarely allowed for eating out. A moment of silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions and possibilities. The weight of years of cautious living, of teaching her children to keep to themselves, of expecting disappointment. All of it visible in Elena Morgan's thoughtful expression. Then, remarkably, she nodded. "I suppose we could do that," she said, her voice carrying a note of surprise at her own decision. "Let me just get my purse and leave a note for David and the kids. They should be back from the park soon." As her mother disappeared back into the building, Lily turned to Marcus and Amelia, a slow smile spreading across her face. The autumn sunlight caught in her dark hair, highlighting the same hopeful gleam that now shone in her eyes. "She never changes her mind," she confided in a low voice. "Never." Marcus returned her smile, understanding the significance. "Well, there's a first time for everything, isn't there?" "Dad says sometimes people surprise you," Amelia added, with the simple wisdom of a child who had seen both disappointment and unexpected grace. "He says that's what makes life interesting." "Your dad's pretty smart," Lily replied, earning a proud grin from Amelia and a modest shrug from Marcus. As they waited for Elena to return, Lily ran her hand over her bicycle's frame, feeling the familiar scratches and dents beneath her fingers. It was the same bicycle, yet somehow different, carrying new stories, new meaning. Like the bookmark Marcus had noticed, it was a small detail that revealed something larger. Perhaps her grandmother had been right after all. Perhaps the greatest risk wasn't in trusting too much, but in trusting too little. The thought warmed her from within, like a small flame cupped against the wind. When her mother returned, the four of them set off down the street together. Lily walking her bicycle alongside Amelia, who chatted animatedly about her favorite ice cream flavors and books, while Elena and Marcus followed a few steps behind, engaged in cautious but genuine conversation. Lily caught fragments about the job market, the school district, and the rising cost of rent in the neighborhood, the universal concerns of parents trying to create stability in an unstable world. None of them could have predicted this outcome 4 days ago, least of all Lily. But as they turned the corner toward Maple Street, she realized that sometimes the most unexpected encounters could lead to the most meaningful connections. The bicycle that had represented freedom now symbolized something even more valuable: the possibility that trust, even when risky, could be rewarded. And in a neighborhood where people had learned to keep to themselves, where suspicion had become a survival skill, that realization felt like its own kind of freedom, as valuable, in its way, as the blue bicycle she'd once again claim as her own. The autumn sun continued its arc across the sky, casting their elongated shadows ahead of them as they walked. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed noon, marking not just the hour, but the beginning of something new and unexpected in the lives of the Morgans and the Delaney's. A friendship forged by a bicycle, a rainstorm, and the courage to believe in the goodness of others. The air was crisp and invigorating as the group made their way toward Maple Street, a route that felt freshly alive with possibilities. Lily felt a flutter of excitement in her stomach, a sensation she hadn't experienced in a while. It was as if the world around her had transformed, taking on a new vibrancy, illuminated by the promise of new connections and experiences. As they strolled down the sidewalk, the autumn leaves crunched underfoot, creating a rhythmic crunch that matched the quickening beat of Lily's heart. The trees lining the street were adorned with golden and crimson foliage, their colors brilliant against the clear blue sky. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over everything, making the neighborhood feel like a scene from a movie, a picturesque setting that seemed to promise adventure. Lily and Amelia fell into an easy rhythm, their conversation flowing naturally as they discussed everything from school to favorite hobbies. "What's your favorite subject?" Amelia asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity and excitement. "Definitely English," Lily replied, her enthusiasm bubbling over. "I love reading and writing stories. I just finished a short story about a girl who discovers a hidden door in her attic. It leads to a magical world filled with talking animals and adventure." Amelia's eyes widened in delight. "That sounds amazing. Can I read it? I love stories with magic in them." "Sure, I can share it with you next week," Lily promised, feeling a rush of warmth at the thought of sharing her work, her creativity spilling into their blossoming friendship. The idea of sharing her story with someone who appreciated it filled her with a sense of pride. Meanwhile, Elena and Marcus walked a few steps behind, exchanging glances that spoke volumes. Elena was warming up to Marcus, her initial reservations fading as he shared stories about his past work experiences and the challenges he faced. "It's not easy to find a job, especially when you're trying to provide for your family," he explained, gesturing animatedly with his hands. "But I believe in hard work and perseverance. Every setback is just another step toward success." Elena nodded, relating to his struggles as a single mother. "It's the same for us. We're just trying to make ends meet while giving our kids the best life possible." She felt a flicker of camaraderie with Marcus, a shared understanding that transcended their differences. As they approached the sandwich shop, The tantalizing aroma of freshly baked bread wafted through the air, mingling with the sounds of laughter and conversation spilling from inside. The cozy restaurant was filled with families and friends enjoying their meals, the atmosphere warm and inviting. Children's laughter echoed off the walls, and the cheerful chatter of groups gathered around tables added to the lively ambiance. Lily pushed the door open, allowing the bell above to jingle cheerfully as they entered. The interior was decorated with vintage posters and wooden tables that exuded a rustic charm, with warm hues and comfortable seating inviting patrons to linger. They found a large table near the window, where sunlight streamed in and cast a golden glow across the tabletop, making it the perfect spot for their lunch. "Okay, what are we ordering?" Lily asked, scanning the menu hanging above the counter, her excitement palpable. "I've heard the Turkey Club is a must-try." "I'm getting that too," Amelia exclaimed, practically bouncing on her feet with enthusiasm. "And I want to try their homemade lemonade. It's supposed to be the best in town, and I love lemonade." As they placed their orders, Marcus and Elena continued to converse, sharing more about their lives and experiences. "I'm really proud of Amelia," Marcus said, glancing at his daughter. "She's been working hard in school, especially in math. We've had some late nights studying together, but she's really improving." "Math can be tough," Elena agreed, a knowing smile on her face. "But it's great to see you both supporting each other. That's what family's all about. It's all about working together to lift each other up." Their sandwiches arrived, steaming and piled high with fresh ingredients, the presentation making their mouths water. As they dug into their meals, laughter and chatter filled the space, punctuated by delighted exclamations over the delicious food. "This is amazing," Lily declared, savoring the flavors of her Turkey Club. "You guys have to try this. It's so good." Amelia nodded enthusiastically, her mouth full of sandwich. "This is the best lunch ever," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with joy. As they shared stories and laughter, the initial awkwardness of their meeting faded into a comfortable camaraderie. Lily felt a sense of belonging that had been elusive for far too long. She glanced at her mother, who was smiling genuinely as she engaged in conversation with Marcus, the two of them finding common ground in their shared experiences. The air was filled with the sounds of clattering dishes and friendly banter, creating a cozy atmosphere that made Lily feel at home. After lunch, they walked over to Gianelli's for ice cream, the sun shining brightly overhead. The small shop was bustling with customers, and the air was thick with the sweet scent of waffle cones and the sound of laughter. "What flavor are you getting?" Lily asked Amelia, her excitement returning as they approached the colorful display of ice cream options. "I'm getting cookie dough," Amelia announced, her eyes wide with anticipation, practically bouncing on her toes. "What about you?" "Definitely mint chocolate chip," Lily replied, her eyes lighting up at the thought of the creamy green goodness, flecked with dark chocolate chips that melted in her mouth. As they entered the shop, they were greeted by the cheerful staff behind the counter, who expertly scooped and swirled the ice cream into cones and cups. The vibrant colors of the various flavors caught Lily's eye, each one more tempting than the last. The shop was decorated with bright murals of ice cream sundaes and smiling cartoon characters, creating an atmosphere that was both fun and inviting. When it was their turn, they ordered their cones with a flurry of laughter and friendly banter. "I'll take a scoop of mint chocolate chip and a scoop of strawberry, please," Lily said, grinning at the server. "And can I get that in a waffle cone?" "Absolutely," the server replied with a smile, quickly preparing Lily's order. As they stepped outside, The sun felt even warmer, a perfect complement to the sweet treats in their hands. "This is the best day ever," Amelia declared, her face lighting up with joy as she took a big lick of her ice cream, the coolness refreshing against the warmth of the sun. Lily nodded, her heart swelling with happiness. "I can't believe how much fun this has been. I'm really glad you came back, Marcus, and that you brought Amelia too. I feel like we've known each other longer than just today." "Me too," Marcus replied, glancing at Elena, who nodded in agreement. "It feels good to connect with people who understand what it's like to work hard and strive for something better. I think we're going to get along just fine." As they strolled down the street, ice cream cones in hand, Lily realized that the world around her had shifted in a way she hadn't anticipated. The neighborhood that had once felt so isolating now seemed filled with potential and promise. She felt like she was part of something larger, a community that could support and uplift one another. "I can't wait to tell my friends about this," Lily said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "I think they'll be so surprised when I tell them I made new friends. They'll want to meet you guys." "New friends are the best kind," Amelia agreed, her cheeks smeared with ice cream as she grinned widely. "And we can all hang out together more often. Maybe we can have a bike ride or a picnic in the park. I love picnics." "That sounds like a great idea," Lily replied, the thought of future adventures sending a thrill through her. "We can bring snacks, and I can show you my favorite spots in the park. There's a great place by the pond where we can feed the ducks." As they walked, Lily glanced at her bicycle, which she had propped against the wall outside Gianelli's. It had been a source of worry and doubt just days before, but now it symbolized something much more significant. A bridge to new friendships, a reminder of the kindness that could exist in the world, and the importance of believing in others and oneself. With the sun shining down and laughter echoing around them, Lily felt a sense of hope and possibility blooming in her heart. Perhaps this was the beginning of something truly special, a new chapter in her life filled with friendships, adventures, and a deeper understanding of what it meant to trust and connect with others. As they headed back toward home, the conversation flowed easily, weaving in and out of topics ranging from favorite books to dreams for the future. For the first time in a long while, Lily felt a sense of belonging and community. She knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she wouldn't have to face them alone. And as the sun began to dip low in the sky, casting long shadows across the pavement, Lily couldn't help but smile at the unexpected turns her life had taken in such a short time. The bicycle, once a simple means of transportation, had become a symbol of hope. A reminder that sometimes, when you take a risk and trust in the goodness of others, you discover connections that can change your life forever. As they approached the entrance to their building, Lily felt a rush of gratitude for the day they had shared. She looked up at Marcus and Amelia, who were chatting animatedly about their plans for the following week. It was clear that this day had forged a bond that would last beyond just an afternoon of ice cream and sandwiches. "Thank you for today," Lily said sincerely, her heart full. "I had so much fun. I can't wait to hang out again." "Neither can we," Amelia replied, her eyes shining with excitement. This was the best day ever. Lily felt a warmth spread through her, a sense of belonging that had been missing for far too long. Perhaps this was just the beginning of many more adventures to come, a stepping stone toward creating lasting friendships and cherished memories. As they exchanged goodbyes and promised to meet again soon, Lily felt a renewed sense of hope. The world outside her door was full of possibilities, and she was ready to embrace them all. With her bicycle, a new friendship, and the love of her family, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she was more than equipped to handle them. And with that thought, Lily stepped into her apartment, a smile on her face and a heart full of promise, ready to embrace whatever came next. The following weeks unfolded with a rhythm that felt both surprising and inevitable. What had begun as a chance encounter in the rain had blossomed into a genuine friendship that neither family had anticipated. Lily stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting her favorite blue sweater and checking her reflection one last time before heading out. Today marked the third Saturday in a row that the Morgans and Delaney's had made plans together. This time, a trip to the community garden, where Marcus had recently secured a small plot through his new employer's community outreach program. "Lily, are you ready?" her mother called from the living room. "Amelia just texted that they're waiting downstairs." "Coming!" Lily called back, grabbing her backpack and the packet of sunflower seeds she'd been saving for a special occasion. This definitely qualified. As she entered the living room, Lily was struck by the subtle changes in her mother over these past few weeks. Elena Morgan seemed lighter somehow, the perpetual worry lines between her eyebrows less pronounced. She was smiling more frequently, especially when Marcus shared his dry observations about life in their neighborhood, or when Amelia's enthusiasm bubbled over during their shared outings. "Do you think these seeds will actually grow?" Lily asked, showing her mother the packet. "It's already October." Elena zipped up her jacket and reached for her keys. "Sunflowers are pretty resilient. And besides, planting them now means you'll have something to look forward to in the spring." The simple wisdom in her mother's words struck Lily as they headed downstairs. Wasn't that what they were all doing in a way? Planting seeds of friendship that would continue to grow and flourish in the seasons ahead? Outside, Marcus and Amelia waited by Lily's bicycle, which was now joined by a refurbished green one that Marcus had found at a yard sale and fixed up for his daughter. The sight of the two bicycles leaning against each other made Lily smile, a visual representation of how their lives had become intertwined. "Ready for some serious gardening?" Marcus asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. The haunted look that had defined him during their first meeting had faded considerably, replaced by a quiet confidence that came with steady employment and renewed purpose. "I brought gloves for everyone," Amelia announced, proudly holding up a canvas bag. "And Dad got us each our own trowel." The walk to the community garden took them through parts of the neighborhood that Lily had rarely explored. Marcus pointed out architectural details on the older buildings, sharing bits of local history he'd learned during his years working maintenance jobs throughout the city. "See that cornerstone?" he said, pointing to a weathered building with an ornate entrance. 1923. This whole block was built right after World War I. The craftsmanship back then was something else. Elena nodded appreciatively. "I've always loved these old buildings. So much character compared to the new developments going up." "That's what I'll be working on starting next month," Marcus replied. "The company's renovating 3 of these old beauties on Chester Avenue. They're keeping all the original woodwork and restoring the facades. I'll be supervising the electrical updates." The pride in his voice was unmistakable, and Lily noticed her mother's expression soften further. There was something about Marcus's quiet determination that resonated with Elena, perhaps because it mirrored her own approach to life's challenges. When they arrived at the community garden, Lily was surprised by its size and vibrancy. Despite the advancing autumn, many plots still displayed colorful produce and late-blooming flowers. An elderly man tended to a row of cabbage plants, while a young couple harvested tomatoes from vines heavy with fruit. Children darted between the raised beds, their laughter carrying on the breeze. "Our plot is over here," Marcus said, leading them to a small but promising patch of earth near the center of the garden. "It's not much yet, but by next summer, we'll have vegetables of our own." "And flowers," Amelia added firmly. "We need flowers too, Dad." "Definitely flowers," Lily agreed, pulling out her packet of sunflower seeds. "These can grow along the back edge. They'll be tall enough to create some shade for the vegetables when it gets hot." For the next few hours, they worked together, preparing the soil, pulling weeds, and planning what they would plant in the spring. Marcus showed them how to test the soil quality and explained the importance of proper drainage. Elena surprised everyone with her knowledge of companion planting, explaining which vegetables thrived when planted near each other. "My grandmother had a garden back in Puerto Rico," she explained when Marcus expressed admiration for her expertise. "She could make anything grow. I used to spend summers with her when I was Lily's age." "You never told me that," Lily said, pausing from her work to look at her mother. Elena shrugged, a wistful smile playing at her lips. "There are a lot of stories I haven't told you yet. Maybe it's time I started." As they worked, other gardeners stopped by to introduce themselves and offer advice. An older woman, named Mrs. Chen, brought them cuttings from her herb garden, while a middle-aged man with an impressive mustache shared extra bulbs he'd been saving for spring planting. "This is what I missed," Marcus said quietly to Elena as they watched Lily and Amelia carefully planting the sunflower seeds along the back of their plot. "Community. Belonging somewhere." Elena nodded, understanding in her eyes. "It's easy to forget it exists when you're just trying to survive day to day." "Exactly," Marcus agreed. "When I lost my job last year, it felt like I lost everything. My identity, my purpose, my place in the world. But maybe what I really lost was my connection to other people." "And now?" Elena asked. Marcus gestured toward their daughters, who were laughing as they created small signs to mark where each type of seed had been planted. "Now I'm finding it again, thanks in large part to your daughter's bicycle." By late afternoon, their garden plot had been transformed. The soil was turned and enriched with compost, future planting areas were marked, and the sunflower seeds nestled beneath the soil along the northern edge. Marcus had installed a small trellis for future climbing plants, while Amelia had created colorful markers for each planned section. "I'm starving," Lily announced, brushing dirt from her jeans. "Can we get pizza on the way home?" "Pizza sounds perfect," Elena agreed, surprising Lily with her quick acquiescence. Normally, eating out was reserved for special occasions due to their tight budget. "My treat," Marcus said firmly. "It's the least I can do after all your help today." "Actually," Elena replied, with a newfound assertiveness that made Lily glance at her in surprise, "I think we should split it. That's what friends do, right?" The simple declaration that they were friends hung in the air for a moment, its significance not lost on any of them. Marcus nodded, respect evident in his expression. "Absolutely right. Partners in gardening, partners in pizza." At the pizzeria, they crowded into a booth, their faces flushed from the outdoor work and their clothes still bearing traces of the garden soil. They ordered a large pepperoni and mushroom pizza to share, along with a pitcher of lemonade that Amelia insisted was almost as good as Janelli's, but not quite. As they waited for their food, Lily noticed how comfortable they had all become with each other. The awkward pauses and careful politeness of their first meetings had given way to an easy familiarity. Amelia was showing Elena pictures of a science project she was working on, while Marcus asked Lily about her latest English assignment. "I got an A on my creative writing piece," Lily told him proudly. "The one about the bicycle that changes the owner's life every time they ride it." "Inspired by recent events?" Marcus asked with a smile. "Maybe a little," Lily admitted. "My teacher said it had authentic emotional resonance, whatever that means." "It means you wrote from the heart," Marcus explained. "The best stories always come from something real, even when the details are made up." When the pizza arrived, steaming and fragrant, they fell silent for a few moments, savoring the first delicious bites. Lily watched as her mother laughed at something Amelia said, her head thrown back in genuine amusement. It had been a long time since she'd seen her mother this relaxed, this present in the moment, rather than worried about what tomorrow might bring. "We should do this again next weekend," Amelia suggested, reaching for another slice. "Dad has Sunday off too, and we could work more on the garden." "Actually," Marcus said, exchanging a glance with Elena, "we were thinking of something different. There's a fall festival at Riverside Park next Saturday. Hay rides, apple cider, craft booths, the works." "Can we go, Mom? Please?" Lily asked, surprised by how much she wanted this outing to happen. Elena smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners in a way that reminded Lily of happier times before the divorce, before the constant struggle to make ends meet had worn her down. "I think that sounds wonderful. We could pack a picnic. And I'll bring my famous apple crumble," Marcus added. "It's my grandmother's recipe, and I only make it for special occasions." "Is this a special occasion?" Amelia asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Marcus looked around the table, his gaze lingering on each of them before answering. "I'd say so. New friends, new beginnings. That's always worth celebrating." As they finished their meal and prepared to head home, the autumn evening settling around them with its early darkness and cooling air, Lily felt a sense of contentment that had been elusive for so long. The day had been simple, just gardening and pizza. Yet it felt significant in ways she couldn't fully articulate. Outside the pizzeria, they paused to say their goodbyes. Amelia gave Lily an impulsive hug, whispering, "I'm so glad your dad borrowed your bicycle," before pulling away with a grin. "Me too," Lily replied, realizing how completely true that statement had become. As they parted ways, Marcus walking with Amelia toward their apartment 6 blocks away, and Lily heading home with her mother, she found herself thinking about the sunflower seeds they had planted. Tucked beneath the soil, they held no visible promise yet, just potential, waiting for the right conditions to flourish. "I like them," Elena said suddenly as they walked home, the streetlights flickering on around them. "Marcus and Amelia, they're good people." "Yeah," Lily agreed, feeling a rush of warmth at her mother's acknowledgement. "They really are." "Sometimes," Elena continued, her voice thoughtful, "the best things in life come from taking chances on people. I think your grandmother would be proud of you, Lily." The mention of her grandmother, the woman who had taught Lily about courage and faith in others, brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "I hope so," she whispered. "I know so," her mother replied firmly, slipping an arm around Lily's shoulders as they walked. "You saw something in Marcus that day in the rain, something worth trusting. You were right, and I was wrong. It's important that I say that." The simple admission touched Lily deeply. In their household, her mother was the authority, the decision-maker, the one who kept them safe in an uncertain world. To hear her acknowledge that Lily's judgment had been sound felt like a significant shift in their relationship. "Thanks, Mom," she said quietly. As they reached their apartment building, Lily glanced up at the night sky, where stars were beginning to appear between wisps of cloud. Somewhere in the community garden, her sunflower seeds lay in the darkness, holding the promise of future blooms. Similarly, the friendship that had begun with an act of trust was taking root, growing stronger with each passing day. Some chances, Lily realized, were always worth taking. And sometimes, the most important journeys began with something as simple as a bicycle in the rain.